Hello everyone, this is Dr. Swati Mishra from International School of Business Management at Suresh Gyan Vihar University, Jaipur. And today we will be discussing a very important topic of project management, which is the project scope management. So whenever we are studying any topic, we also have to understand the scope of that topic properly. And it becomes highly important for us to do that. And today we will be discussing this topic in detail. So, without wasting any further time, let us move ahead. So, the first thing that we need to understand is that what is project scope management? What do we understand by project scope management? Now, as all of you know, that scope basically refers to all the work which is involved in creating the products of the project and the processes used to create them. Say if the project is not inclined towards creating any product, but whatever is the final outcome of the project would be considered as its product. So, every activity, every operation that is involved in creating that final outcome of the project and all the processes which are involved in it, including the, uh, you know, resources also. So, everything would come under the project scope. Now, if I say deliverables, then a deliverable is a product which is produced as a part of the project, such as hardware or software, any kind of planning documents or maybe minutes of the meetings. So all these things are the deliverables, right? Now, similarly, if I talk about the project scope management, then that would include the processes which are involved in defining as well as controlling what is or is not included in a project. Okay, so that is what exactly is meant by project scope management. You know. So there are multiple processes which are again involved in project scope management, which are shown on your screen also. You can see the scope planning is there, like when you first decide as to how the scope will be defined, verified, as well as controlled while the project is in its implementation phase. Then, of course, project scope definition is there, wherein you are reviewing the project charter and the preliminary scope statement. Besides that, you are adding more information as per the requirements of the project, and all the information is developed and the change requests are also approved accordingly. Then comes your, you all are very well aware of what is a work breakdown structure. So post the planning and scope definition of project scope management process comes the part where you create your work breakdown structure, wherein you are subdividing the major project deliverables into smaller little parts, categories, and they become a work element in themselves. Each small work package is there, which is a work element in itself. And what happens is that you know this division of your entire project into smaller work packages makes it more manageable for the project manager to not only manage it but coordinate the activities within them, to see whether each process is functioning with full efficiency or not, because at every small element the timelines are fixed, the deadlines are fixed resources are getting consumed, so everything has been pre-decided. So you can easily find out whether at every piece or every part of the work breakdown structure, whether the uh, major project deliverables are functioning properly or not. Then comes your scope verification, wherein formalizing the acceptance of the project scope by the key project stakeholders is also highly important. you know and then comes your project scope control, because it's okay, you have planned, you have defined, you have created the work breakdown structure, then you have verified the scope also, but it's highly important for one to you know control that scope. Controlling any sort of changes in the project scope which directly impact the project cost and the time goals also. So all these things also become a part of the project scope management. So whenever we are actually, trying to create a project scope management, or that process of project scope management also requires you to, create a summary of the entire scope management process, wherein the small sample has been shown on the screen, wherein you are planning, the scope planning is done, then project scope management plan is created, what is the output that is stated, what are the processes which will be involved in that project are created through work breakdown structures. Once work breakdown structure is created, the output of that is the work breakdown structures, its dictionary, scope baseline, requested changes to the project, updates to the project scope statement. If any change is required, you can always update your project scope statement also, which means that you have to keep your project scope statement absolutely flexible so that you can make relevant changes in them. Then, of course, comes the monitoring and control part. After in monitoring and control, you have to first verify the scope, and once verification is done, you get accepted deliverables. The requested changes are made. Any kind of recommended corrective actions are also included. Then comes your scope control, and finally, your project scope is properly gathered, and all this is not actually happening only at the start or maybe at the middle of the project management which is carried out, but when the project starts till the project finishes, all these activities are carried out. So now let us talk about each and every step in thorough details, and try to understand first of all what is scope planning and scope management plan. So the scope management plan is a document that includes descriptions of how the team will prepare the project scope statement, create the Wbs, then you verify the completion of the project deliverables, and of course any kind of control requests if they are necessary for making relevant changes in the project scope, then they are also done. Like if you require, if it is understood by the team that the kind of deadlines that have been set are actually not uh, practicable, which means that within these deadlines we cannot function properly and we need certain changes in that, then such type of change requests can be made, and those changes will be fitted in the Wbs structures, I mean work breakdown structures, and those changes are implemented as the project is going on, uh, or has is being implemented. So there are multiple key inputs also which are required while you are planning the scope of the project, and they would include the project charter. Any kind of charter is like starting, right, or launching of the project. Preliminary scope statement, if it is there, although it is highly necessary for every project team to design a preliminary project scope statement, that this is going to be the scope of the project will have these limitations, project will be functioning within these deadlines, project will be using these kind of resources. So there are multiple things which are involved in this. And of course, there is a project management plan also, which is supposed to be created. We have already studied what how projects are planned in our previous sessions. So I don't think there is any scope of confusion over here. So of course, this plan which is created has to be reviewed with the project sponsor, which means either the organization's top management, which is actually carrying out that project, or maybe any other sponsor who is sponsoring body which is interested in that project, or is investing funds in that project. Your entire scope plan has to be discussed thoroughly with the project sponsors, so that you can make sure that the approach with which the project scope has been created and the way the project is moving ahead, it is as per the expectations of the project sponsor or not. Just give me a second. So whenever you are actually conducting this project and you are running a project and you have already designed your project management scope also, you know uh, you have to actually understand that whenever we conducted any sort of other projects, then what were the things that made our previous projects run so successfully, right? So, like many financial service companies, they are using tremendous customer relationship management systems to improve their understandings of this customer relationships, and of course the responsiveness to the customers. There are senior management teams, they like there was a senior management team at Canadian money management company Dynamic Mutual Funds, which launched an enterprise-wide national program to build and manage its customer relationships. They actually needed a faster and more recognized, highly participative approach. So they proposed a new seven-step concept, which was called as project scope design, right? So these organizations were actually the ones which understood that what was the actual reason why we could actually survive in the market, how our projects could run successfully in the market. So that is why these organizations have been looking forward towards correct methodologies for project scope management. And this DMF, they also won a e-customer world golden award for world class innovations when they designed this 7-step concept of project scope design. So I will also introduce you to what this design was. you know the 7 steps of this design were, first of all, to analyze the project's atmosphere, the stakeholders and the centers of influence who are going to influence the project, any customer, any government body, any type of NGO which may come and have a stake in that project. So, aligning the project scope with the organization's strategic objectives and business challenges is the second step in this, and which means that the project atmosphere has been understood. In what kind of environment my project is going to function or run. After that, you need to align the project scope with the organization's strategic objectives, right? Which means that what kind of strategies the organization is going to use for the functioning or correct planning of the project, and what methodologies or tactics will be implemented by the organization or the project team for quicker and faster and more effective completion of the project. So that is why it is highly important to align the project scope with the organization's strategic objectives and the business challenges. The third step then, after aligning these objectives and strategies or the challenges with the strategies, obviously, why is any organization creating any strategy? The reason is to overcome the business challenges. So once this is done, you need to determine where to add value to the business. So whenever you are carrying out any step in your project, what happens is that at every process, at every step, at every juncture, or at every little work package of the work breakdown structure, value addition is carried out in the project. Are you all understanding this? So, with this value addition that is being done, uh, you know, you have to determine that, what kind of value each step is going to add to that project, and wherever necessary, you need to give a greater push to add better values to the business. For this, the fourth step later on becomes the study of the process flow between the business units, right? And developing an efficient communication strategy also. You also need to develop a correct project approach. That is the sixth step of this project scope planning. And once you have developed the correct project approach, the last step is to coordinate the new project with the other initiatives which are already underway, right? So these are the 7 steps that I wanted to introduce you to. Now let us move ahead, and this is a sample of project scope management plan which I can show you. This is for an information technology upgrade project, So, this is how the preparation of the scope statement is done. A preliminary scope statement is designed. After that, you create the work breakdown structure. You verify the completion of the project deliverables, manage the request for changes of the project scope. This is a sample of the project charter or the project launch, the same project, wherein they have clearly mentioned the title, the start date, the finish date expected, the project objectives. Like, they've given it clearly that to upgrade the hardware and software for all the employees within 9 months based on new corporate standards. Then, of course, the approach. They've clearly mentioned the approach here, like updating the IT inventories database to determine the upgrade needs, developing detailed cost estimate for project and report to CEO, issuing a request for quote to obtain hardware and software, using internal staff as much as possible for planning, analysis, and installations. Then roles and responsibilities, they have clearly mentioned who is going to do what, any, then it is signed by the authorities. So this is how a project charter is done, and this is a little sample or document of the project charter. So now let us try to understand that what is this project scope definition and project scope statement, because you could see that the first step of this project scope management was to define the project scope. So the project team actually develops a preliminary project scope statement in initiating a project as a part of the project integration management knowledge area. So the preliminary scope statement or the project charter, or maybe the organizational process assets and approved change requests, all these things, provide a basis for creating a more specific project statement. And by using all this, you can actually decide upon the entire project scope statement and the definition of the project scope, that how this project is going to function. So, the project scope statement should always include a small description of the project, like the overall objectives, the justification of those objectives, that how you justify these objectives. Then detailed descriptions of all the project deliverables. Then the characteristics and the requirements of the products and services produced as a part of the project. And of course, other helpful information also, like project success criteria, project boundaries, product acceptance criteria, any kind of scheduled milestones, order of magnitude cost estimates, all these things. So, when you are actually defining a project scope, you can see on the basis of the same example that I had taken earlier of IT upgradation of some organization. You can see over here the project charter is done. Upgrades may affect the servers. They've clearly mentioned over here, and then the preliminary scope statement is created, wherein they have clearly mentioned everything, that if additional servers are required to support this project, they must be compatible with the existing servers, and it is more economical to enhance the existing servers, and a detailed description of the enhancements must be submitted to the CIO for approval. Uh, so all these things are clearly mentioned in the preliminary scope statement. After that, the project scope statement version 1 is created. Why is it called version 1? Because if there are any change requests, they will come to the other versions after implementing the changes. So in the project scope statement, they have clearly mentioned that whatever will be required, what are the applications, what are the servers that will be required here, Then they've given detailed description of the servers, when, in, in which appendix they have added it. They've clearly mentioned everything, including the locations where they will be installed. So that is what is a project scope statement. So although it is not, you know, unnecessary, but this media snapshot was included over here, but it's not a part of your course curriculum, so I'm moving ahead, and because of the time restrictions, we will be discussing about the work breakdown structure now. So a WBS is basically a deliverable oriented grouping of the work which is involved in the project that defines the total scope of the project. And you are already clearly aware of what WBS is, so I need not repeat it again and again. You just have to understand its relevance in the project scope management. The relevance is that WBS is a foundation document that provides the basis for planning and managing product schedules, costs, resources, and changes. And the decomposition is subdividing the project deliverables into smaller pieces. A work package is a task at the lowest level of the WBS, and tasks on a WBS represent work that needs to be done to complete the project, whether the specifications are given or not, but mostly the specification should be given at the time of creation of this. So the project statement and the project management plan are basically the primary inputs for creating this WBS. And that is why the outputs would always include the WBS itself, the Wbs dictionary, a scope baseline, and updates to the project scope statement and scope management plan. Now you must be wondering what is the importance of this Wbs dictionary. Sometimes it happens that some kind of terminologies that are included in WBS plan, they are not clear to the people who are going through it, and that is why this dictionary is highly important. Then of course the WBS is depicted as a task oriented family tree of activities, and that is why it can be organized around the project products, or maybe project phases, or even using the project management process groups also. So this is an example of partial WBS organized by product areas, not the complete one of an organization. So it shows the same WBS of the same case in consideration that we have taken earlier. Talks about the intranet, then the website design, homepage design, marketing pages, sales pages. So these are the different WBAs that it has created. Under each WBS, there are different work packages. Like under website designing, there are 3 work packages of sitemap, graphic design, programs. Homepage design includes text, images, hyperlinks. Marketing pages include text, image, hyperlinks. So this is how this WBS is done. So this schematic diagram actually shows you a partial WBS which was organized by the project phase. So which includes the initiation of the project, and under that comes the concept, website design, website development, then the then the rollout, and of course the support. So you know this is a outline of how WBS will look in a tabular form, if you can see it. And then this is a Gantt chart which is showing the WBS in a Microsoft project only. And the Gantt charts here, these lines, you can see on the see where the cursor of my mouse is moving. So these are actually showing the timelines. And here, I'm sorry, here on the top you can see the months, and here you can see that a project which is starting somewhere near 11th of January is actually completed somewhere in the start of the April, 5th April. So, that is how, and this is what, this is the timeline of the website development. So they have given a timeline of everything here, like website design, development, rollout, support. So this is actually making it very clear to understand the timelines of the project that is going to be undertaken. So the intranet Gantt charts organized by project management process groups, they are very efficient in deciding upon whether, how much time will be required to carry out each and every activity, and how many resources will be required at each and every level of the work breakdown structure. So, of course, there are various approaches to develop a correct work breakdown structure. So, mostly the organizations provide a guideline to the project team manager to, actually form the WBS. The analogy approach is also there, which reviews the WBS of similar projects and, of course, tailors it according to the needs of your own project. Then there is a top down approach also, which starts with the largest items of the project and break them down into smaller items. There is a bottom up approach wherein you start with specific tasks and roll them up to becoming to increasing their difficulty level. Then there is a very interesting approach which is called as mind mapping approach. So what is this mind mapping approach? Mind mapping is a technique that uses the branches radiating from a core idea to actually structure the thoughts and ideas so that the correct structure of the thoughts and ideas can be clearly understood. That is what is mind mapping. So basically, mind mapping is a way of creating pictures that show ideas in the same way that they are represented in your brain. So your brain uses words, pictures, numbers, logic, rhythm, color, and spatial awareness to build up unique pictures of information. The ideas are then linked together in a way that makes it very easy to understand and remember, right? So this is how mind mapping actually functions. So you you just have to use some keywords, or wherever possible you can use some images. You can start from the center of the page and start working out. Make the entire center a clear and strong visual image that depicts the general theme of the map. Then you can create subcenters for sub themes. You put the keywords on lines, and this reinforces the structure of the notes that have to be generated. You can actually print rather than write in the script. It makes them more readable and more memorable also. So please remember that lowercase is more visually distinctive and better remembered than the uppercase letters. So that is why it is recommended to use only lowercase letters while creating this document. You can also use some colors to depict the themes, but mostly try that the colors are not too light that they are not even visible on lighter backgrounds. And of course, the associate to you can display the associations or any kind of MOU that you have entered into with them. and of course make things stand out. So that is why you need colors for this. So anything that stands out on the page will stand out in your mind also. So you can also think in a three-dimensional way. You can use arrows, icons, and other visual aids to show links between different elements. Don't get stuck at one place. If you dry up in one area, go to another branch. Put ideas down as they occur wherever they can fit. So don't judge or hold back anything. Try to break the boundaries. If you are running out of space, don't start a new sheet. Rather, paste more paper onto the map. Break the 8 by 11 mentality. Be creative, because creativity aids memory. So, all these things are actually a part of detailed study of project scope management. This is another sample of mind mapping approach for creating a work breakdown structure, if you can see, wherein it is clearly shown that initially the project management and installation of hardware and software is carried out. From that, updated inventory and updated database is created, and as well as, people are actually assessing the requirement of hardware as well as software, and any kind of updated inventory, updated database is over there. Then you can perform physical inventory management clearly. Like if three buildings are getting constructed, then what type of inventory will be required in which building. Similarly, if you are acquiring any hardware, then or else if you are just installing the servers in three buildings, then where you are going to actually install, how much of inventory will be required for installation in the three buildings, all that can be carried out. Then, of course, the next is to acquire the hardware and the software like servers, user hardwares like laptops, desktops, whatever is required, all that can be included, and that is how mind mapping approach is used for creating work breakdown structures. So the resulting work breakdown structure, if it is put in a chart, it will look like this. I'm giving 2 minutes for you to analyze this, then we will move ahead. It's the same structure that I had shown you under the mind mapping technique. So let us move ahead. Then we reach to the creation of work breakdown structure dictionary and scope baseline. So many of the WBS tasks are very vague and they must be explained more. So people exactly know what to do and they can estimate how long it will take and what it will cost to do the work. So a work breakdown structures dictionary is basically a document that actually describes in detail the information about each and every element of the work breakdown structure. So the approved project statement and its WBS dictionary, they form the scope baseline together. So, which is actually this scope baseline is actually used to measure the performance in the meeting of the project scope goals. Whether the project was actually supportive in creating a project scope goal or not. In this slide, a small sample of WBS dictionary and is also given. So when you are trying to actually create a WBS dictionary, then a unit of work should appear at only one place in the WBS. The work content of a WBS item is the sum of the WBS items below it. A WBS item is the responsibility of only one individual, even though many people may be working on it. So the WBS must be consistent with the way in which work is actually going to be performed. It should serve the project team first, and of course, the other purposes only if it is practical. So, the project team members should also be involved in developing the work breakdown structure to ensure that the structure is also created very consistently, and each and every person is involved in it, and they are actually giving their inputs in creating this WBS, so that later on any kind of conflicts or hassles do not occur. And each WBS item must be documented in a Wbs dictionary to ensure accurate understanding of the scope of work which is included, and what all is included in it and what all is not included in it, or else we can say that what all activities have been secluded from the WBS. So the WBS must be a flexible tool to accommodate any kind of inevitable changes, while proper planning, maintaining, controlling of the work content in the project according to the scope statement is done. After this, the next step is your scope verification. It is, of course, very difficult to create a good scope statement and this WBS also for a project, because at every step, every project team manager, even you people must have worked in multiple projects, and every time you must have felt that there are some changes which are required. So that is why it is very difficult to create a perfect scope statement, and it is even more difficult to verify the project scope and minimize the scope changes. And that is why scope verification actually involves formal acceptance of the completed project scope by the stakeholders. And this acceptance is often achieved by a customer inspection and then signing off of on the key deliverables. So, there are a few things which also go wrong, and I will be explaining that with the help of some examples also. So, like a project scope that is too broad, or maybe a very grand project scope statement has been created and the work breakdown structure is also grandiose, then it can cause severe problems to industries. So any kind of scope creep and an overemphasis on technology for technology's sake, that we are including too much of technology in our project and we are too happy about it. So that will also result in bankruptcy of big firms, and it has happened earlier also with Foxmare Drug Company, which is a pharmaceutical firm based in Texas, and they actually went bankrupt because of this overutilization of technology. Similarly, in 2001, McDonald's fast food chain initiated a project to create an intranet that would connect its headquarters with all of its restaurants to provide a detailed operational information in real time. So after in this project, the McD chain actually invested, or I should say spent 170 million US dollars on consultants, on initial implementation planning, and so on. And McDonald's realized that the project was so huge that it was very difficult to handle it. And that is why they had to later on terminate this project. Similarly, when we talk about scope control, that is another very important aspect. Scope control, which is the last step of project scope process, it involves controlling the changes to the project scope, like any kind of goals of the scope control are to influence the factors that cause scope changes, assure the changes which are processed according to the procedures developed as a part of the integrated chain control. Similarly, managing changes when they occur. And there are multiple tools also for performing scope control, which include change control system, and of course configuration management. So all these things are there for scope control. Similarly, variance is the difference between planned and the actual performance, which is highly important to be judged at the time of scope control. Because only if you are finding out those variations, you can actually implement corrective actions and rectify the problems that are arising. Okay, so that is all about project scope management. We have almost covered the entire part of project scope management. So that is all from my side for today. This is Dr. Swati Mishra at Suresh Ganvyar University signing off. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.